I believe we are recording. Alrighty, dark greetings everyone. We are here with Richard Daniels today, who is a writer of very strange and weird and wonderful fiction and non-fiction. I read your book Earth to Earth, which really cracked me up and spooked me in equal measure. And also, do you run Occultaria of Albion magazine? Or you're involved with it? Yes, I thought so. Yes, it's a wonderful sort of little magazine full of weird and wonderful sort of like local legends and location-based tales, amongst other things, which I really enjoyed a couple of those issues last year. I've been meaning to get them all really, because once I've started collecting something, there's, got to get the whole set.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yep. So welcome and thank you for being here. Really appreciate you coming to talk to us. It's very rare we get someone that sort of straddles books and magazines and fiction and non-fiction. So
thank you.
It should be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's not often people want to speak to me, so.
So as a little sort of get to know you, I have some quick fire questions that we'll open with, and then, people listening can get to know you a little bit and your taste. And I want you to know that these are all very serious questions, Richard, for which you will be judged.
I am a very serious person. So.
So firstly, and this is one of the most important questions, tea or caterpillars?
Tea or caterpillars? I have to say caterpillars. Can't stand.
Oh my God, interesting. I thought maybe about asking you about tea or coffee, but I thought that's so standard.
Yeah.
I
do like
Go on. Sorry.
I do like a warm caterpillar first thing to get me started in the morning.
Yeah, I haven't seen a caterpillar in quite some time, I have to say. Not a lot of caterpillars around these parts. What, in your opinion, is the worst TV show finale of all time?
Probably have to say Merlin.
Interesting.
A few years ago, I thought it was terrible.
Oh no, I think I watched a little bit of that. That was what you'd expect from a show called Merlin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wizards.
Yes, that's right. Arthur and it was sort of like young Arthur, I suppose, and young Merlin as well. Mm-hmm. It was quite a few years ago now, but I remember I got really into it and like religiously watched it, and then the last episode was just pants. Can't really remember a great deal about why it was pants, but it was.
Well, that says it all, really. It wasn't a good finale if you don't remember it. I try not. Sorry.
What about you? What's your biggest TV disappointment?
I think that maybe Game of Thrones was the worst, but I was quite disappointed with The Walking Dead because I was very loyal and I stuck with that till the bitter end. And then the last episode was basically just a trailer for the other spin-off shows they were making, so was pretty upset with it. But learned the lesson. I'm just not watching the spin-offs now.
Yeah. I'm currently.
Don't trust him.
I'm currently religiously watching every episode of Murder, She Wrote at the moment. That's my obsession. Yeah. So there's about 12, 15 seasons of it, I think, and I'm on about season 5 right now. So.
Yeah, I was going to say there are a lot of episodes of that, aren't there?
They're not all great, but there's one or two that are pretty good.
We started watching Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh right.
Because we thought we'll pick something that has a lot of episodes that'll carry us for a while. But I didn't realize that season 1 is quite bad.
Right. People always forget these things, don't they? Like when a show is taken off, it's very easy to sort of think that it's always been good or whatever. But sometimes they do take a while to sort of bed in, and there's a lot of bad stuff as well as the good stuff, I think.
Yeah, I watched it when I was a kid and I have nothing but fond memories. So I've been trying to assure my husband that if we can just get to season 3, I think he'll like it.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah. lot of time commitment for him though to go on blind trust on that one. So.
Yeah.
What do you think, in your opinion, is the best film that Disney have ever put out?
Probably, don't know, something like one of the Disney Pixar or Monsters Inc. One of those things, if they count. Maybe Mary Poppins.
Oh, I did love Mary Poppins. I do like Toy Story though.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
That was good. And I like the when I was a kid, Alice in Wonderland is my favorite, but I think I like there's like a first wave of Disney, and I think I like the first wave with like all the darker stuff.
Yeah. I also have a soft spot, I suppose, for Robin Hood.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that. So if we move on to a horror question, sort of, who do you think is the scariest character across any storytelling, books or film or TV or whatever, that isn't actually from a horror franchise?
Good question. Scariest character that's not from a horror film. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, I'm thinking of a few, but then I keep thinking, well, maybe they're probably just horror things. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Could you say Darth Vader?
That's a good one.
Like I also pretty bad.
Yeah, he's scary. I'd also say for a while I was insisting that Cartman from South Park belonged in horror.
Oh right. Why?
He's just very evil. You could compile all of his evil acts. He's quite quite scary. I wouldn't want to be on the bad side of him. And I'd also say Homelander from The Boys now. Sorry? Homelander from The Boys as well. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah. No, I'm not familiar with that one, sorry.
But yeah, he's a good scary character. This is a really serious question. Do you enjoy jigsaws?
No, is the short answer to that. Not really. Oh, is that the wrong answer?
There's no wrong answer, Richard.
Are you a jigsaw fan?
I am. I get new jigsaws from my husband for Christmas every year, and he's been finding me horror themed ones. So I had one that was The Shining. It was the Grady twins last year.
Oh, cool.
So
we are talking about the puzzle, not the sort of wood cutting DIY piece of machinery.
Yes,
not
the
that
puzzle.
Kind of jigsaw. Yeah.
I don't know much about the other kind of jigsaw, I have to say. Do you have a favorite horror subgenre?
I suppose I'd have to say something along the lines of sort of folk horror, I guess. That type of thing. I know it's quite sort of fashionable at the moment, isn't it? But that's sort of very English or very British. Isolated village, weird happenings type of thing. As epitomized by something like The Wicker Man. I'd go for that.
I love folk horror is one of my newer favorite subgenres but probably because it's popular, so I've got to read a lot more of it recently. A very big Adam Neville fan.
Right. Yeah.
And the magazine I always say it wrong when I'm trying to say the whole Occultaria of Albion. That's part, like, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a lot of like non-fiction sort of like local legendy stuff in that, and that has very folklorish feel to me in general.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the sort of inspirations that I draw on, like the local legends, paranormal stories from places up and down the country. There's always like urban legends attached to various places, and I guess that's what I'm sort of playing with it and I'm dressing it up as if it's non-fiction, like these are real case files, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so when I was reading it, I was like, is this real? Is it not real? I was Googling stuff.
Good. That's what I want people to do, is to think, Yeah, I've been to that place, or we've driven past that place, or
Yeah, and the stories are so strange, but they're not so strange that they'd be like unbelievable as a local legend. So
yeah.
I was there looking up these places like, oh, I think I heard a thing about this place. It was like it was really fun, and like I recommended it at the time as like a good magazine for writers to read.
Yeah.
Because it kind of gets you, like, your creative mind starts going over like, oh, I wonder what I could, what if I could pick this weird location or this town, or yeah, it's really really fun. I haven't read a magazine like it, and I've read quite a few now because I do get sent those for review quite a lot, but it's very unique, and yeah, I'll put for anyone who's listening and interested, I will put the link for the website and the magazine in the description so people can go check it out.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, it's a fun time. I had a fun time reading those. We'll move on to that a bit more.
Just to go back to to go back to your question about subgenres that I like. I guess this would count, but I'm really into terrible B movies, like really bad horror movies, like straight to video, usually from like the 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. So I think that's another big influence as well. Really clunky, bad movies.
I also enjoy those, and I think that, like with everything else, really, in my opinion, the 80s had the golden era of the B movies. They just don't make them like that anymore, Richard.
No, they don't, and it's a shame in some ways. Or I don't think they could make them without sort of playing it ironically rather than playing it straight, which I think is the beauty of those sorts of films.
Yeah.
The most recent one I watched was called The Wizard of Gore.
I've seen that.
Yeah, but there's a remake of it from about 10, 15 years ago that's got Crispin Glover in it from Back to the Future. Crispin Glover. Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet, but I don't know. I imagine the remake is bad, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the remake as well. Well, I saw the remake first, and then I realized it was a remake, so I watched the original. But yeah, I think that I don't think the remake
have any charm like the original does.
Crispin Glover has some charm, but I just didn't feel like they truly captured the feel.
Yeah.
The original. Yeah, oh gosh. I feel like a lot of the B movies of the 80s, like at some point achieved like a cult following where people were suddenly like, no, actually, we love this. I can't imagine a bad B movie that's made in this decade having that kind of longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I guess time will tell, see what happens.
Would you call Troll 2 a B movie?
It's difficult because it is, I suppose it has B movie budgeting, doesn't it, and sensibilities, but it's a good question.
I always wonder I wonder a lot about Troll 2, actually, what was going on, what they were thinking. It's a great time, though, for people who haven't seen it. You should treat yourself to Troll 2. You don't need to have seen Troll 1. It's nothing to do with Troll 1.
That's right, yeah.
So this is actually kind of an 80s question. Do you know what this is?
No, I don't know what that is. Sorry.
So this is turning into a running joke in Happy Goats interviews where I'm asking everyone if they know what this is, and so far no one has a clue. It's a weirdness from my childhood that I'm offering a prize to anyone who is watching this interview. If you know what it is, you will win a prize. I will explain this to you after we stop recording.
I was going to say, you're not going to reveal it to me now what it is.
I'll tell you when we stop recording, because
okay, great.
I can't leave you hanging like that. But yeah, one other person in my real life knows what this is, and otherwise I would have thought I'd imagined it. But yeah, I'll move on to that with you later.
Yes.
Okay, so another really serious question. Would you rather have hands for feet or feet for hands?
So I didn't realise this was going to be such a tough interview.
I know.
I feel like I'm getting all the questions wrong as well. I didn't recognise your plastic thing. And okay, I'm just stalling here. I would rather have hands for feet, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you could perhaps still live some sort of a life then, couldn't you, maybe?
Yeah, because if you had feet for hands, you wouldn't be able to do much.
No.
Quite the inconvenience.
It would. I mean, I couldn't hold my warm cup of caterpillar in the morning. Or...
Exactly. Yeah, you'd really struggle with that. And catching the caterpillars in the first place, I would imagine would be a nightmare.
And it would be hard to type and write things with my feet.
Yeah, you'd have to use one of those voice recognition things, and they're never good.
No, or I'd have to hire a secretary to type my notes up or whatever. Like, take this down.
And all your random musings.
Yeah, and also,
Go on, sorry.
I'm trying to make it as a writer and get, but everybody would just want to ask me about my feet hands all the time, and I'd be like, but I've got books I've written, I want to talk about those, and they'd be like, no, tell us about your feet hands.
Yeah, it would just be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
You'd be like, guys, I'm more than my feet hands, okay? I want to offer the world.
I've got much more to offer the world.
Oh God, if people hear any bits of this interview out of context, they're going to think this is not a serious interview.
Yeah, jeez. I know.
So onto something that is a bit more serious. What is your favourite type of potato, as in mashed or boiled?
Probably fried, like the waffle form or the chip form of potato.
Ooh, well, that's a good shout. I do love
it. And versatile, isn't it? Waffly versatile.
Yeah, it is. I got married last year, and we have a group of Irish friends that we invited, and they are stereotypically all very into potatoes. And at one point during our meal, there was a massive sort of uproar cheer from their table. It was the loudest thing, and we all looked over wondering what that was about. And it was sincerely about, there was one guy at the table that wasn't Irish. They asked him if he liked potatoes, and he said, I love potatoes, and that's what erupted everyone. I thought that's the most stereotypically Irish thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Celebrations.
I guess these stereotypes are based on truth, really, aren't they?
Yes, but who doesn't love a good potato, No,
like, what's your favourite form of potato?
I think I'd go with chips, but yeah. I do quite like a baked potato, a good jacket potato.
When you eat a baked potato, do you eat the skin?
Yeah.
That's the best bit, isn't it?
Yeah. Because you got to season it with some salt and pepper.
Yeah, my dad, whenever he had jacket potatoes, he always left the skin, and we could never understand it because we always thought, like, that's the best bit of a jacket potato, is the nice crispy skin.
Yeah. Well, what a weird anomaly.
I know. And this is my father.
Well, you got your strangeness from somewhere then, I guess. Inherited it. So this is the last of the quickfire questions, and it is actually bookish. So do you have a book that made you love books?
I mean, there's quite a few, I suppose. In terms of horror, I'd probably have to say Night of the Crabs by Guy N. Smith. Mm-hmm. He's like one of my favorites, a lot of his books, but I read that when I was a kid, and it sort of like captured my imagination then and what have you. So that's probably one of them. And then another one that's less sort of horror, or not horror at all, would be something like On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Mm-hmm. Again, I read that when I was sort of like 17, 18, when, it's kind of all about adventure and getting out and experiencing life. And, at the age of 17, that's kind of what you wanted. And, like the beatniks and all that kind of, the excitement of being a bohemian writer, that sort of captured me as well. But probably those two, maybe.
Yeah, there's I've read some Guy Smith. I haven't actually read On the Road yet, but I'm trying to branch out of horror a bit and just read not only horror. I'm quite bad for. I'm like, oh, but I always fancy a horror novel, so other genres have fallen by the wayside, but I am trying to make an effort.
Yeah, I definitely say. Well, I mean, I haven't read it for years now, On the Road, so maybe if I came back to it now, like as a grumpy middle-aged man, I'd perhaps not be so enamored of it. But so some books, aren't they? They're like for a time in your life, aren't they? And sometimes you read them at the right time, and I suppose sometimes you come across a book and it's not the right time. So.
Yeah, there are books that I've shelved and then I've gone back to later, and I really enjoyed them. Yeah, I can't imagine that anyone can remember their first book, because most readers I know have been like, they can just remember that they've always loved reading. I don't remember I don't think I know what my first book love was, but the first thing I can remember reading that blew my mind was The Stand. But I was 12 then, and I'd been obsessively reading before that, so I don't know. I think I was reading those Christopher Pike books and like the Sean Hudson's YA horrors, probably. Right. Those point horror books.
Yeah.
They were good.
I think it's a similar thing with albums. I think sometimes you can hear an album like music and not get it at the time, and then maybe come back to it. That was always with David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. That I listened to that when I was like a young teenager, and I just didn't get it at all. And but now I love it. So it's just one of those things.
I never appreciated Prince. My mum was a big Prince fan, and probably didn't play a lot of his stuff when I was in the house, actually, because when I listened to it as an adult, I was like, oh, this is a little bit sexy. But really appreciated him as a musician when I got into when I got into my 20s. But as a kid, I was just like, what is this crap?
Yeah.
Have you always written? Did you write stories as a kid?
Yeah, I did as a kid. One Christmas, I can't remember, I must have been about 11 or 12. I got an old typewriter for Christmas, like an old Olivetti portable typewriter. I'm not sure why I got it. I guess I don't really remember, but I guess maybe I'd been writing things or talking about it beforehand, or whether it was just a random present that somebody gave me. But yeah, I used to type stories up on that, and I had like half a dozen sort of stories about, probably based on the sorts of 80s action movies that I've been watching, so it was about, I don't know, it's things that are like astronauts going into space and then getting infected by sort of comet radiation and then turning into some sort of a creature, things like that. So yeah, I did write a little bit, and also like murder mysteries, sort of like in my 12-year-old mind, it was like this great murder mystery, a bit like a Sherlock Holmes thing. But so yeah, so I did when I was young, and then I stopped for a while. And I mean, I always wanted to be a writer, and then as I got a bit older and into my early 20s and stuff, I suppose I always sort of had this desire to do it, but I always was too full of self-doubt, or didn't really believe that it would ever go anywhere or whatever. And then so I stopped for a long time, and then after a while, I think you just realize that you can't. It's an itch that you can't ignore anymore, and sort of I went back to it and thought, well, I've got to go for it and keep writing.
Yeah, it's well, firstly, you're a very, very good writer. That Earth to Earth, I was beside myself, like giggling, and the sense of humor in it. You're one of those writers where I read that and I thought, yay, a new writer that I really like. Like when you get one of those, and then I looked for more of your stuff and thought, Richard, there's no more books.
I know, and that's, well, I've been doing a lot of the Occultaria of Albion magazines. That's sort of where a lot of my time and energy has been going. And I also have a podcast as well that I do, that's Occultaria of Albion podcast. But I do want to get another book written and what have you. So that is on my to-do list. Don't you worry, because that's really what I want to do. Have another paperback out or whatever.
Yeah, I enjoyed it so much because I didn't know what to expect from it, and I just remember thinking that the one character really reminded me just sort of tonally of Rincewind from the Terry Pratchett Discworld series.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really nice comparison to make now.
There was a lot of that kind. It was like that kind of humor is really up my street. That kind of, there's like you've got like your story, and then there are these just like, I don't want to say silly because I don't want to like, you're not writing like spoof, but it's the kind of humor that just really tickles you. Like I don't know, I was really like tittering away reading that book, and I just remember getting to the bit with the mushrooms, and I was like, this is great. Yeah, it's you had such a good blend of like horror and comedy elements, and then like fantasy. In that book had everything, and it's like if you read like me, it's quite a quick read. Like, 'cause once I'm in. So yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend that to everybody.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm hoping that there will be more in the future. Maybe about an Unwitcher, maybe something slightly different, but
yes, I would love to read more in that universe. Definitely. So you said something interesting about I think that a lot of people who work in any sort of creative fields have that self-doubt, because for some reason in society, like, even though everyone worships actors and musicians, novelists that they like, if you're someone who's aspiring to be one of those things, people are a bit like, they're taken very seriously as a legitimate profession that you can go into, even though thousands of people are doing it. Do you have that sort of that thought, that kind of like block going on when you're doing the magazine, or does that feel different to you because it's a different format?
What, the block that I feel like an imposter, you mean, that sort of?
Yeah, that kind of, yeah.
Any sort of creative thing I'm working on, it tends to follow me around. Like, I can't escape this sort of sense of imposter syndrome, I suppose as they call it. But maybe less so with the magazines, just because they're a little bit shorter sometimes, and I feel like I know what I'm doing with it now, because I've done quite a few of them. Like, I'm in the groove of it, so it doesn't sort of trouble me quite as much as maybe when I sat down to write a longer thing like the novella or what have you. So less so, but it's something, I think it's just part of your character or your nature sometimes as a creative person, that it's hard to escape the pull of that feeling like, oh, there's so many people that are doing this and I must be one of the more terrible ones. And I mean, you're a writer and creator as well. How do you get over that? Or
I don't know if I'll ever get over it. I feel like I'm constantly just screaming into a void. And everything I write, I think that short stories for me feel safer to spend my time on, because then if they don't go anywhere, then I didn't like waste much time. Whereas I have been trying to write a novel for like 7 years, and I always hit a point where I decide the entire thing is trash and it's irredeemable and I can't save it. And I've been taking a lot of advice from writers I look up to recently with like, just finish the book. Just finish it, and then go back and edit. But it is hard, and I've had I used to tell everyone, oh, I'm going to be a novelist. That's what I want to do. I want to work in creative arts, and I want to tell stories. And people are like, oh, why didn't you get a real job? And I was like, I have a real job, and I don't like it. And it was like, I've never managed to stay in a day job. Well, I enjoy my day job now, but that's because I'm a personal assistant to a writer. So I get to like, it feels very much in line with like what I enjoy doing. But typically I haven't stayed very long in other professions because I'm trying to force myself to enjoy work. I know this is going to sound so stupid to everyone else because everyone has to work for a living, but I just, yeah, I would.
That doesn't sound stupid. I mean, I've been through the same thing where for a long time I was in a job that, you know, didn't make me happy, and it was just really a question of, oh, I'm just doing this until my bestseller takes off or whatever, and you know, and then there comes a time eventually where you realise that you're probably in it for the long haul, and you know, yeah, it's not easy. But I'm in a job now that is much less sort of stressful and time consuming and difficult, so the balance is redressed a little bit. And
yeah, I think if you work a job that's where, you know, for me, a big thing for me is conventions. I really enjoy going to like book and writery type conventions. And if I have a job where I can like actually book that weekend off and it's not going to be a massive issue, like I'm happy then. I've just worked jobs where they're like, no, you can't have that Saturday off 8 months in advance. What?
Yeah.
I need to. Yeah, it's I know a lot of really talented creators, and every now and then you see someone go, right, I'm packing it in, I'm giving up, and I'm like, oh no, because I do wholeheartedly believe that the difference between success and failure is like if you just stop trying. I feel like if you just keep working hard and I think some of it's luck, like it helps if you meet people that can maybe give you advice or maybe introduce you to an agent or whatever. But I
think you're right, and I think as well that if you stick at things, you also put yourself in the way of luck. You know, you sort of make it more likely that luck is going to run you over, and you know, and it will lead on to something else. And it's not necessarily. I agree with what you're saying. It's not necessarily about talent always. It's just the people that win through are the ones that stick at it or are able to, for whatever reason, they're able to stick at it. You know, it's not always easy.
I think it's endurance.
yeah, definitely.
Like a little bit of talent and a good work ethic, and then just sort of like trying to put yourself in the right situations if you can. But it is,
I'm also looking. I don't know about you, like what your husband does, but my partner Melody, she's also very creative. She's an artist, and so together she helps me a lot with the sort of the art and the formatting of the magazines. You know, she does a lot of the artwork for that, and so her input and her creativity is brilliant. And also we look out for each other in terms of our own creative mental health and stuff. And she's always bigging me up, and I try and do the same for her. So, you know, that's important. If you can surround yourself and have the love of people that understand, you know, what it is that you want to do and all that.
That is lovely. That's lovely that you can work on that stuff together.
Yeah.
My husband and I are very different. He's not into horror or books really, but he works in IT, but he is a very, very talented singer, which he doesn't think he is at all, and breaks my heart because he's as good as or better than, in my opinion, a lot of the people who are making a living from it.
Right,
But he's very supportive, and last year, because we were, you know, paying off our wedding, I said, oh, I don't think I can justify spending the money to go to book conventions this year. And he was like, you have to go.
Yeah.
It's for your career.
Yeah.
So he was like, I insist, you have to go. He's like, you can't not go. And I thought, oh.
Yeah, it's really important to have that outside voice, somebody that reaffirms what you're doing and gives you a license or whatever, allows you to do it. Like, I know you don't need that somebody to say yes, you can do that, but having somebody that will say that is really important.
Yeah, it's lovely. He did introduce me to the band that inspired my whole last short story collection as well. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Periphery. I always mention them and no one's ever heard of them.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. A lot, yeah. They're kind of a weird sort of subgenre of metal that a lot of people just don't listen to, but I love them, so I'm grateful for his influence with my music tastes.
Does your husband sing like with a band, or I mean, when you say you've heard him, is it just like at home, like in the shower, you've heard him? And
Yeah, he just sings a lot in the house, and he's done vocals a couple of times for other people that need a vocalist when they're recording something, and he's incredible, but he really thinks that he's like a below average singer, and I keep going, oh, my brother is a really talented percussionist. I'm like, form a band, just find a bassist, because my husband plays guitar as well. I was like, just find a bassist. Come on.
Wow.
Yes, it's the self-doubt though. Kills me that he doesn't think he can sing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll be watching this, and maybe it will, make him think again.
My favorite is when he thinks I'm out of the house and I walk in and he's singing and he doesn't know I've come in, because then he's doing it at the top of his voice instead of like reining it in because he knows I'm here. With your sorry, I didn't even have a good segue from that. I'm just going back to the magazine for a minute. With the kind of like, it's all sorts of things, the stories in the magazine, but there's a lot of like paranormal phenomena and UFOs and sort of like otherworldly kind of like ghosty stuff. Why is like sort of like, and the location is always like the central thing in those. So what is it about particular locations that inspires you?
I think the thing that really interests me the most would be locations that are kind of, broadly speaking, dismissed or considered sort of like backwater places, or not interesting, or just so everyday that the bizarre and the paranormal and things can't really, or don't usually happen there, and they're sort of overlooked by mainstream media or whatever, so there, because I grew up and I live in Lincolnshire, which is one of those places that is just like that. It's very rural and it's very empty of sort of like cultural things happening, and there's no real big metropolises nearby, and so I'm always sort of like pulled to sort of like those quite out the way places, because that's where all the kind of mysterious, interesting things happen. So I think that's really where it comes from. I would never be interested probably in setting something in London, for instance, because A, I'm not really super familiar with London, and B, it feels as if it's just everything happens there, and it's not as interesting to me at all as sort of like the knackered towns that are in the Midlands and forgotten about.
Yeah. I've been to Lincolnshire once, and I can see scope for creepy happenings there. I was just in a town centre. It was all cobbled, and there was this church, and it looked beautiful, and that's where my mind goes, is to creepy things when I'm in nice locations. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to. Obviously, you're Welsh, and I don't want to sort of like cast the entirety of a country in like one sweeping statement, but like again, Wales, I suppose, is another one of those sorts of places where it's sort of a bit of considered a backwater and kind of empty, and that's where all these mystical things can happen, because no one's really looking at those places.
Yeah, I agree that I live in a tiny little South Wales town in a valley, so surrounded by mountains, and it's really pretty if you look out of any window. But it's just one of those places no one's ever heard of. And when I was a kid, we do have like stupid local legends here. There's one where I think I was about 8 and I heard there's a panther on the mountain.
Brilliant, yeah.
And just stuff like that. And you just go up the mountain with your friends in the summer, and then the people who are swearing down that they've seen this panther and they escaped the panther, and like there's no panther up there. And there's also
there is a panther.
There is a panther, yeah. What do I know? I never saw it. And there's a spot in the woods as well, called the Three Sisters, and I don't know why it's called that, but that was like what all the kids called it, and everyone thought that they were witches up there. So I used to write like funny little horror stories when I was a kid about the Three Sisters and the witches. And then as I got older, I learned that historically the Welsh didn't really believe in witches, and I was very disappointed.
Wow.
So
why were the Welsh so smart or so?
I don't know. I just thought, well, that's a shame, because Wales and all the mountains and the woods is a perfect place for witches, you'd think.
Yeah.
Creepy cabins and stuff.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of places like that and all the kind of backwater towns and stuff, is you can easily overlay things about UFOs and mysterious big cats and legends and things like that. It's so much more open, I think, for an imagination to sort of explore it, rather than, perhaps it's just me and my psyche, but big cities, I find they're there's too much. It feels as if it strangles all this kind of weirdness that you could sort of potentially write about. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes it clear. And I don't want to suggest that people in cities don't have, I know that there's plenty of weird, paranormal, exciting things that happen, but somehow I can't get my mind to lock into it for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not a city person either, and I can't see myself setting a story in a city. I think it's just I don't know it well enough. I've never lived in a big city, and I don't like that many people around me for some reason. Like I really prefer to live like a hermit in a little hovel. So I've seen exceptions, like I know I mentioned Adam Neville earlier. I think he's pretty good at writing scary London stories, but they're usually confined to a flat in a block of flats or something. But I'm a fan of the small town village sort of creepiness. Do you ever sort of like draw from, like, if you hear something weird about a location, does that then inspire you to write about it, or are you always creating your own?
No, yeah, obviously my aerials are always open to sort of like weird stories. So usually it's just that stories or legends that fascinate me, I'll sort of like read into and research, and then I'll take them into and try and put them into another context, or bend it so it fits some other sort of strange context. So for instance, in one of the zines, the magazines, where I'm talking about a pub called the Black Birch Inn, a pub in Suffolk, and I was always really interested in the Philadelphia story, about the ship, the boat, the US naval ship that disappeared. People actually said that they saw it sort of like disappear for a few seconds and then it reappeared, and they made a film about it. I think it was called the Philadelphia Experiment, actually. So I always thought that was a great idea. And then I just thought, well, what if somebody, for whatever reason, was using a building as a thing to try and make disappear? And then I thought, well, maybe there'd be an army base near this pub, and it was some sort of secret, project that was being carried out, and they were using a pub. So I wrote this story about a pub that was like made to disappear and then reappeared and whatever. So yeah, take sort of real things that have happened, or real sort of like legends that are well known, and then do something with it in a weird context.
So that's so interesting. I thought the thing about the stories in the magazine that I really like is that some of the ideas are like really out there, but like the way that you present them, you could totally see why like a whole town of people would believe this thing about the pub or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's you straddle like a really fine line between almost going too far.
Yeah.
To believe it's a local legend, but being just weird enough that it would like draw in tourists.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing I always like to do. Is like how far could I stretch this ridiculous idea, and where's the sort of the balancing line between over the top, completely ridiculous, and something that could possibly happen, in a kind of weird world. It could be possible and people could believe it. So That's why when people say, "Oh, I googled this place because I thought maybe it existed," that's why I always feel like, yeah, I've got it right there. Then.
Yeah, I can't think of a single other publication that inspires that that level of like research. And you put the thing down, you're like, I have to find out.
Yeah.
How did it feel, or did it feel different for you then when you moved on to your book and you could just go all out with the craziness?
I feel as if the book was really an extension of the stuff that I do with the magazine in a way, because like the main character, the Unwitcher, is something that I've written about in the magazine, and I thought, well, I'd like to just take that and have a longer story and still sort of bed it in this sort of like location that's rural and whatever. So it was just a way of really expanding on what I'd already done. Earth to Earth really sort of came about. I'd written it as a podcast or an audio drama was where the sort of like original idea came from. It was like I'd written a 6-part audio drama, and my idea was to get some friends together and do a read through of the script and actually record it and put it out as a podcast, like a 6-part audio drama podcast about this Unwitcher character. And then COVID happened. We'd done a couple of rehearsals and then COVID struck, and it was dead in the water. And by the time COVID had come and gone and all that period of time, it just didn't feel like, or I didn't feel like I wanted it to be an audio drama anymore. And so I had this 6-part script, and so I thought actually it would probably make for a better story or novel. So I went back to it and sort of like edited it and jigged it about and turned it into the story, into Earth to Earth. So its seeds were really like an audio drama.
Yeah, I could see it working as an audio drama, as well. It's a very you managed to paint like a very sort of like not fully complete world, because I'd love to like read more in the world, but you get like a really good sense of the world you're in quite a short space of time, because it's novella length, isn't it? Earth to Earth.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Like so for like a short page count, really, you did manage to pack in like this whole universe of weirdness.
Thank you.
Like I think I said at the beginning, I didn't know what to expect when I went into that book, but it wasn't what it was. Like I don't know. Really funny, really weird ideas, but like the best kind of weird.
I think you, in your review for Happy Goat Horror, I think you might have said it was like cozy horror or something along those lines.
Delightful horror.
Delightful horror.
It's like delightful to read. Yeah.
I really like that. I like that sort of idea of it being delightful or cozy in some way. Like it's. I don't know what my point is here, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, there's just so much horror out there now, and there's kind of like there's sort of like a horror category for everyone, I think. So you get your really quiet horror where it's almost even not horror, but it's like just unsettling, and then you everything from that to your really extreme horror categories. And what I've seen a little bit more of in recent years, especially because I get a lot of review requests, so I feel like I kind of know-ish what the indie horror trends are. Because all of a sudden I'll see a lot of cosmic horror for a few months, and then, but it's been fewer in this category, but I've really been enjoying stuff that sort of infuses like fantasy, like sort of, and a lot of it is set in like the real world you can imagine, but there's somehow really speculative world building in it. So yeah, I find that delightful, that kind of where you've still got like a good sense of humor and characters that the characters in Earth to Earth, like I know people that have like elements of their personalities, so it felt very like homey, but also like in a ridiculous setting and concept. So yeah, I'm gonna have to reread it. I really want to reread it now. Yeah, I've circled all the way back round to no. I hardly ever reread books because I always have so many requests going. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to. I want to go back into that spot.
Well, that's very kind of you. If you'd like, I'll send you a few copies of the zine if you like. You know, if you want to, I'll send you some random zine copies. I can't remember which ones you've got now, but
I'll double check. I can't.
Yeah, if you want to let me know, I'm happy to send you a few.
Well, happy to review anything you want to send me, Richard.
Yes, I will.
I like being in your weird bubble of a world that you've made.
Yes, come join me.
Yeah, and I think more people should be joining you in your world. I think this is probably a good place to end our conversation for today, but I would like to just reiterate to everyone listening, a wholehearted recommendation for Earth to Earth, and also the magazine if you're someone who likes really sort of like off the wall, peculiar brand of horror that you're not going to see in many other places. I definitely haven't seen your particular style very much, and that is saying something considering the amount of books that are sent to me. Yes, I'd recommend your book to fans of horror, fantasy, and then just like really weird little comedy elements, I think. And the magazine for anyone who just likes spooky, peculiar fiction, I probably would say.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree.
What are you working on at the moment, Richard? Magazine things? Have you got anything outside of the magazine you're working on?
Well, yeah. Funnily enough, at the moment, the current project is to do a live show of the Occultaria of Albion. So present case files in a sort of mock lecture sort of style with PowerPoint slides. And I've got a musician friend who goes by the name of Linoleum Department, and he's sort of like an electronic wizard. So he's actually we're gonna perform live together, and he's gonna sort of soundtrack this mock lecture of the OA case files. So we're just sort of working on putting that together, and hopefully in the second half of this year, we'd like to try and play at a few venues like theatres and the like, festivals maybe, and do a live show of OA. So that's currently what I'm working on, as well as also the next edition of the magazine. So yeah, keeping busy.
That live show sounds amazing. That's such a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it could be really good. You know, we're just sort of like putting it all together at the minute, but similar to what you were saying maybe about the magazine, that there's nothing quite like it. I think maybe we're trying to sort of capture that same thing in the live show. Like, you know, not that I go to lots and lots of live performances, but I don't think there's anything quite like what we've got in mind. So it should be fun anyway if we can bring it all off together.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd go to more live shows if there was more variety in what you can get in a live show, and that sounds great. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, I'll plug my friend as well, Linoleum Department. I would recommend people sort of look him up as well. He's on Instagram and so on. His sort of electronic music is brilliant, very ambient and sort of mysterious. So yeah, check him out too.
I'll pop a link to his socials in the description as well.
Great stuff.
I'm not going to forget that name anyway.
Yeah.
Department.
It's another one that's difficult to say.
The mind boggles about what that means.
Yeah, there is a story behind it, but.
Well, it sounds like a perfect combination of people working on a thing then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we go back quite a long way together, so I think, you know, we understand each other quite well, which I think is important when you're trying to put something like that together.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. Yes, keep me updated. I'll spread the word about that when you have dates and places and stuff. Okay, well, I will free you from this interview now. If you hang around after we stop recording, I'll explain this to you.
Brilliant.
But for now, yeah, hopefully we can get you back maybe around the live show time after you've done that.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Yeah.
You can give us a little overview.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for being here again, Richard. It's been lovely speaking to you, and I hope everyone has enjoyed this odd conversation.
Thank you ever so much. I've really appreciated it.
Okay, bye.